The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor, and I watched 20 years of marriage die with it. To Jack! Trent Delacroix raised his glass higher, his voice carrying across our penthouse terrace like a death sentence. The perfect placeholder husband. The laughter that followed wasn't just cruel, it was orchestrated. My wife Vivian's friends had been waiting for this moment, their phones already recording as Trent continued his toast with theatrical flair. Seriously, folks, let's give credit where it's due. Jack kept the seat warm, paid the bills, and now he can step aside for the real thing. Trent's perfectly veneered smile caught the sunset light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our 42nd floor apartment. I stood frozen by the wet bar, ice tongs still gripping a cube that was melting between my fingers. Around me, the people I'd called friends for the past decade were applauding. Actually applauding. Vivian, my elegant, brilliant attorney wife, didn't just laugh. She stood up from her designer chair, walked over to Trent, and kissed him. Full on the mouth, in front of everyone. You're absolutely right, darling, she said, loud enough for the entire terrace to hear. Placeholders serve their purpose, but eventually you need to upgrade. Sienna Rodriguez, Vivian's best friend since law school, was practically bouncing in her seat. Oh my God, Viv, this is so perfect. You two are like meant to be. Greg Martinez, Vivian's law partner, nodded sagely while adjusting his Rolex. Jack's a good guy, but let's be honest, he never really fit into this world, did he? That's when something inside me snapped. Not broke, snapped. Like a steel cable under too much tension. I set down the ice tongs with deliberate precision and walked to the edge of the terrace. Below us, the city sprawled out like a circuit board, all lights and connections. I'd helped wire half those buildings. My construction company had put up 3 of the skyscrapers visible from where I stood. You know what's funny about placeholders, I said, turning back to face the crowd. My voice was calm, conversational even. They're temporary by design, but so is everything else. Vivian's smile faltered slightly. She knew that tone. Take this apartment, for instance. I gestured around at the 3,000-square-foot penthouse with its panoramic city views and imported Italian marble. Beautiful place. We've been here, 8 years now? But here's the thing about real estate. It's all about who's on the deed. The laughter had stopped. Trent was looking confused, like someone had changed the channel in the middle of his favorite show. Jack, what are you talking about? Vivian's voice carried a warning edge that her friends probably mistook for annoyance. I knew it was fear. Just making conversation, sweetheart. After all, this is a party, right? We should all be celebrating. I walked over to the outdoor sound system and turned up the volume. Jazz music filled the awkward silence. But you know what? I'm tired. Long day at work, making sure all those construction projects stay on schedule. All that placeholder work that keeps the lights on. I headed toward the sliding glass doors that led back into the apartment. You folks enjoy the rest of the evening. The champagne's top shelf. Cost about $3,000 a bottle. Seemed like a good night to break out the expensive stuff. As I stepped inside, I heard Trent's voice behind me. What's his problem? And Vivian's response. Don't worry about him. He'll get over it. That was her first mistake. I walked straight to my home office and opened the safe, hidden behind my engineering diplomas. Inside were the real documents, the ones Vivian had never bothered to read carefully because she trusted her placeholder husband to handle the boring financial details. The penthouse deed, the investment portfolio statements, the business accounts, all of it in my name, because I'd been the one earning the money while she'd been building her legal career with my financial backing. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to my real estate agent's number. Patricia Chen answered on the second ring. Jack, it's pretty late for a property call. Patricia, I need you to list the penthouse, tonight. Tonight? Jack, what's going on? I'm getting divorced. I want the apartment on the market by morning. Price to move fast. There was a pause. Jack, are you sure about this? That place is worth $16 million. You might want to think $15 million. Cash offers only. No contingencies. That's leaving money on the table. I don't care. How fast can you move? With those terms, I could have 3 offers by noon tomorrow. Perfect. Send me the listing agreement. I'll sign it tonight. I hung up and opened my laptop. Time to do what I did best. Methodical planning and flawless execution. By the time the last guest left the terrace 3 hours later, I had already transferred our joint savings accounts into my personal account, canceled all the credit cards in my name, and forwarded our mail to a post office box I'd opened online. Vivian found me in the office at midnight, still working. What are you doing? She asked, her voice artificially sweet. She'd changed out of her party dress into silk pajamas, the ones I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. Just some paperwork. You know how it is, placeholder work. She walked behind my chair and put her hands on my shoulders. Jack, about tonight. What about it? Trent was drunk. He was just being dramatic. I saved the document I was working on and turned to face her. Vivian, were you planning to tell me about the affair? Or were you just going to keep using me as your financial safety net while you figured out your exit strategy? Her hands dropped from my shoulders. I don't know what you mean. Sure you do. You're a smart woman. Brilliant, even. You wouldn't risk everything unless you had a backup plan. I stood up and walked to the window. The question is, did you really think I was stupid enough not to figure it out? She was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost all pretense of sweetness. What do you want, Jack? Nothing from you, but I want you to understand something. I turned back to face her. I'm not your placeholder anymore. As of tonight, I'm your problem. I woke up at 5 a.m. to the sound of Vivian screaming. What do you mean it's listed? Her voice carried through the apartment's thin interior walls as she paced the living room with her phone pressed to her ear. Patricia, this is my home too. I made coffee and listened to the one-sided conversation with deep satisfaction. Patricia was apparently explaining the legal realities of property ownership to someone who'd spent her career in corporate law instead of real estate. No, you don't understand, Vivian continued, her voice climbing toward hysteria. I live here. My name is on the… What do you mean it's not on the deed? I took my coffee out to the terrace where the remnants of last night's party were scattered across the furniture. Champagne glasses, cocktail napkins, and a few forgotten purses that Vivian's friends would probably want back. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. 3 offers already. Highest is $15.2 million. All cash. 30-day close. Want me to accept? I typed back. Accept the highest offer. Send contracts today. Another buzz, this time from my business partner Mike Thompson. Saw the listing online. Everything okay? Mike had been my friend since college, back when I was just a working-class engineering student, and Vivian was the ambitious law student who'd somehow seen potential in me. He was also one of the few people who hadn't been invited to last night's party. I called him back. Jesus, Jack, what happened? Mike's voice was concerned but not surprised. He'd never liked Vivian. She decided I was a placeholder. I decided she was wrong. The penthouse is worth more than 15. I know, but I want it gone fast, and I want her to understand that her comfortable life just evaporated. Where are you going to live? I'll figure it out. Right now I'm more interested in making sure she figures out where she's going to live. Mike was quiet for a moment. You need help with anything? Actually, yeah. Can you swing by this afternoon? I want to move some things out before the showings start. I'll be there at 2. I hung up and went back inside. Vivian was sitting at the kitchen island, staring at her phone like it had betrayed her. The apartment's sold, I said conversationally, refilling my coffee cup. Her head snapped up. You can't do this. Actually, I can. It's my apartment. We're married. I have rights. You do. You have the right to half of whatever's left after I pay off the mortgage and the capital gains taxes. I sat down across from her. That should be about $4 million, give or take. Of course, that's assuming you can prove you contributed financially to the purchase. Vivian's face went white. She was finally doing the math. You bought this place with your business income, she said slowly. That's right. While you were building your career at Martinez & Associates, I was paying the bills. Funny how that works. This is vindictive and petty. No, this is business. You want to trade up from your placeholder husband? Fine. But you don't get to keep the life he built for you while you do it. My phone rang. Patricia again. Jack, the buyers want to schedule a showing for this afternoon. Is that possible? Absolutely. What time? 2:30. Perfect. We'll be out of your way. I hung up and smiled at Vivian. Showings start today. You might want to make other arrangements for this afternoon. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know. Maybe Trent has some ideas. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the marble floor. You're being cruel. I'm being practical. You made your choice last night. Now you get to live with the consequences. Jack, please. Can we talk about this like adults? We are talking about it like adults. One adult decided the other was a placeholder. The other adult decided to stop playing that role. I finished my coffee and put the mug in the dishwasher. I'm going to work. The movers will be here at 2 to get my things. You should probably pack whatever you want to keep. Movers? I'm moving out today. The new owners take possession in 30 days, but I figured you'd want some time to find a new place. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. Jack, wait. I turned back. For a moment, She looked like the woman I'd married 20 years ago. Vulnerable, uncertain, almost young. "This isn't how I wanted this to happen," she said quietly. "No, you wanted to keep me around as your safety net while you figured out your upgrade, but that's not how it works." I opened the door. "Give my regards to Trent." The elevator ride down to the parking garage gave me 42 floors to think about what came next. I'd been planning this moment for months, ever since I'd first noticed the changes in Vivian's behavior, the late nights at the office, the sudden interest in her appearance, the way she'd started talking about Trent Delacroix, her law school friend who'd recently moved back to town after his divorce. I'd hired a private investigator to confirm what I already knew. The photos and documentation were sitting in my office safe, but I hadn't needed them. Last night's performance had been confession enough. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Trent. We need to talk." I deleted it without responding. Another text, this time from Sienna. "Jack, Vivian is really upset. Maybe you should reconsider." I deleted that one too. The third text was from Greg Martinez. "This is unprofessional and embarrassing. Call me." That one I responded to. "Greg, as of today, I'm no longer interested in your opinion about anything. Have a great day." By the time I reached my office downtown, I felt better than I had in months. My secretary, Mrs. Patterson, looked up from her computer as I walked in. "You're early today, mister." "A very big day ahead, Mrs. Patterson. Can you get Mike Thompson on the phone and call the bank? I need to speak with our business account manager." "Right away, sir." I settled into my office chair and looked out the window at the city skyline. Somewhere up there, Vivian was probably calling her lawyer friends, trying to figure out how to undo what I'd done. She was about to learn that some things couldn't be undone. The first crack in Vivian's support system appeared 3 days later. I was having lunch at Morrison's Grill, the upscale restaurant where the city's professional class gathered to see and be seen, when I spotted Greg Martinez at his usual corner table. He was dining with a potential client. I recognized the man as the CEO of a tech startup that had been in the news lately. Greg saw me too, and his expression shifted from surprise to something that looked like guilt. I walked over to their table. "Greg, good to see you." I extended my hand to the CEO. "Jack Avery, Avery Construction." "I don't think we've met." "David Park," the man replied, shaking my hand. "Actually, I've heard great things about your company. We're looking for a contractor for our new headquarters." "Really? That's interesting." I glanced at Greg, whose face had gone slightly pale. I'm surprised Greg didn't mention that we've worked together on several projects. In fact, Avery Construction built the Martinez and Associates offices. "I didn't realize you two knew each other," David said, looking between us. "Oh, we go way back. Greg's actually married to my wife's law partner." I smiled pleasantly. Small world, right? Greg cleared his throat. "Jack, perhaps we could talk later. Actually, David, since you're looking for a contractor, you might want to ask Greg about the Meridian Tower project. That was one of our collaborations." I kept my voice conversational, but I could see Greg's jaw tightening. "Remember that, Greg? The project where the permits got expedited so quickly?" David looked interested. "Expedited permits? That's impressive in this city." "Well, when you have the right connections in the planning department, things move faster." I patted Greg on the shoulder. "Greg's very well connected. Aren't you, Greg?" I could see the sweat starting to form on Greg's forehead. The Meridian Tower permits had been expedited because Greg had a friend in the planning office who owed him a favor that had involved some very gray area legal advice about zoning variances. "Jack," Greg said carefully, "I think you might be misremembering some details." "Am I?" "Well, my memory's not what it used to be." I pulled out my phone. "Good thing I keep detailed records of all my projects, including the permit timeline and the, shall we say, consultation fees that made it all possible." Greg's face went white. "Anyway, David, I'd love to discuss your headquarters project. Why don't I give you my card?" I handed David my business card. "And Greg, give my best to Vivian. I'm sure she's been keeping you updated on our situation." I walked away, leaving Greg to explain to his potential client why he suddenly looked like he was going to be sick. My phone rang before I'd even left the restaurant. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Greg's voice was tight with panic. "Having lunch. What are you doing?" "You can't threaten me, Jack." "I didn't threaten you. I just reminded you that we have a history together. A history that includes some very interesting paperwork." "That was all legitimate, was it? Because I seem to remember you asking me to pay your friend in the planning office directly, in cash, for his consulting services." I also remember you asking me not to put that payment through the books. Silence on the other end of the line. Here's the thing, Greg. I don't really care about your little side deals, but I do care about loyalty. And last night, you chose Vivian and her boyfriend over 20 years of friendship. Jack, you're being unreasonable. No, I'm being practical. You want to side with them? Fine. But don't expect me to protect you from the consequences of your own choices. I hung up and walked back to my office. Mrs. Patterson handed me a stack of messages as I passed her desk. 3 calls from your wife, 2 from someone named Sienna, and 1 from a Trent Delacroix. Thank you. Any calls I should actually return? Mike Thompson called. He said the storage unit is ready whenever you are. Perfect. Anything else? The real estate agent called. The buyers want to move up the closing date. They're offering an extra $50,000 for a 2-week close. I smiled. Tell her yes. An hour later, Sienna Rodriguez appeared in my office. She'd bypassed Mrs. Patterson somehow and was standing in my doorway like she owned the place. We need to talk, she announced. No, we don't. I didn't look up from my computer. Jack, this is ridiculous. You're acting like a child. Now I looked up. Sienna, you were at my home 3 nights ago, drinking my champagne, eating my food, and applauding while your friend's boyfriend called me a placeholder. Now you want to lecture me about being childish? She walked into my office uninvited and sat down in the chair across from my desk. Vivian is devastated. Good. She made a mistake. No, she made a choice. There's a difference. Sienna leaned forward, trying to look sincere. Jack, you know Vivian loves you. Sienna, you posted a video of last night's party on Instagram. I saw it. Vivian kissing Trent while people cheered. That's not what love looks like. Her face flushed. That was just, she was caught up in the moment. She was caught up in humiliating me in front of our friends, and you helped her do it. I stood up and walked around my desk. Now you want me to forgive and forget so everyone can go back to pretending this didn't happen. What do you want, Jack? You want her to grovel? I want her to live with her choices, just like I'm living with mine. You're destroying her life. No, I'm stopping her from destroying mine. I opened my office door. This conversation is over. Sienna stood up, her face twisted with anger. You know what? You are a placeholder. You always were. Vivian deserves better than some blue-collar contractor who got lucky. You're probably right. But here's what you don't understand. I don't want to be anyone's placeholder anymore, including hers. After Sienna left, I called Mike. How'd it go with Greg? He asked. About as expected. He's scared. Good. What about the others? Sienna just left. She's angry, which means she's starting to realize that Vivian's problems are about to become everyone's problems. And Trent? Haven't heard from him directly, but I'm sure I will. I was right. Trent called that evening while I was packing boxes in my temporary apartment across town. Jack, this is Trent Delacroix. I think we should meet. His voice was smooth, confident, the voice of someone who'd never had to face real consequences for his actions. I don't think we should, I replied. Look, I know you're upset about the other night. I'm not upset, Trent. I'm done. What do you mean, done? I mean, I'm done being married to Vivian. I'm done pretending to be friends with people who don't respect me, and I'm done having conversations with the man who's sleeping with my wife. Jack, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. Reasonable would be meeting you in person and explaining exactly what I think of you. This is me being generous. I hung up and went back to packing. My phone buzzed with a text from Vivian. Please call me. We need to talk. I deleted it. Another text. Jack, I'm sorry. I never meant for things to happen this way. Delete. A third text. I'm staying at Sienna's tonight. The apartment feels too empty. I stared at that one for a moment, then typed back. It's going to feel a lot emptier in 2 weeks, when the new owners take possession. She didn't text back. The showdown I'd been expecting finally came on a Thursday evening at Morrison's Grill. I was having dinner with Mike, discussing the final details of a commercial project, when Vivian walked in with her entire support crew. Trent, Sienna, Greg, and another lawyer from their firm named Rebecca Walsh. They took a table across the restaurant, but I could feel them watching me. The other diners were starting to notice too. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. This isn't a coincidence, Mike said quietly. No, it's not. They're staging an intervention. Want to leave? No, I want to finish my dinner. We were halfway through our entrees when Trent stood up and walked over to our table. He was dressed in an expensive suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month, and he moved with the casual arrogance of someone who'd never been told no. Jack, I'd like to speak with you privately. I'm having dinner with my friend. You can say whatever you need to say right here. Trent glanced around the restaurant, clearly uncomfortable with the audience. This is a private matter. Nothing about this situation is private anymore. You made sure of that the other night. He pulled out the empty chair at our table and sat down uninvited. Look, I know you're angry. I'm not angry, Trent. Anger implies I care about your opinion. Then what do you call this? He gestured vaguely. Selling the apartment, freezing the accounts, threatening Greg. I call it taking control of my own life. Mike was watching the exchange with interest, occasionally glancing over at Vivian's table where the others were pretending not to stare. Vivian loves you, Trent said. What happened the other night? That was my fault. I'd had too much to drink, and I said things I shouldn't have said. You said exactly what you meant to say. The only thing you regret is that it didn't go according to plan. What plan? The plan where I quietly accepted being pushed aside while you moved into my life. The plan where I kept paying the bills while you enjoyed the benefits. Trent's composure slipped slightly. That's not... Look, Vivian and I have history, but that doesn't mean... It doesn't mean what? That you weren't planning to take over my marriage? That you weren't already sleeping with my wife? The conversations at nearby tables had stopped. People were openly listening now. Jack, please keep your voice down. Why? Are you embarrassed? I leaned back in my chair. You weren't embarrassed the other night when you were making toasts about placeholders. I apologized for that. No, you made excuses. There's a difference. Trent looked over at Vivian's table, clearly hoping for backup. Vivian was staring at her wine glass like it held the secrets of the universe. What do you want from me? Trent asked. Nothing. I want you to understand that your little coup failed. You wanted to replace me? Congratulations. You get to replace everything I provided. The apartment, the lifestyle, the financial security. All of it. That's not how marriage works. You're right. Marriage is supposed to be a partnership based on love and respect. What you and Vivian were planning was a hostile takeover. I stood up and dropped 2 20s on the table. Mike, ready to go? Mike nodded and stood as well. This isn't over, Jack, Trent said. Yes, it is. You just haven't figured that out yet. As we walked toward the exit, I could hear the buzz of conversations starting up again behind us. By tomorrow, half the city would know about the confrontation at Morrison's Grill. We were almost to the door when Vivian intercepted us. Jack, please. 5 minutes. She looked terrible. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, her makeup couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes, and her designer dress looked like she'd been wearing it for days. 5 minutes, I agreed. Mike squeezed my shoulder. I'll wait outside. Vivian led me to a quiet corner near the bar. The restaurant's ambient noise provided some privacy, but I could still see her friends watching us from their table. I'm sorry, she said. I'm so sorry. For which part? The affair, the public humiliation, or the fact that you got caught? For all of it. Jack, I never meant for things to go this far. How far did you mean for them to go? She was quiet for a moment, staring at her hands. I don't know. I was confused. And Trent was what? Charming? Exciting? Rich? He made me feel young again. And I made you feel old? You made me feel safe, secure, but not alive. I nodded. So I was a placeholder. No, that's not. Vivian, let's not pretend anymore. You kept me around for security while you figured out if you could do better. The only thing you regret is that your exit strategy didn't work. Tears started running down her cheeks. That's not true, isn't it? You've been planning this for months. The separate credit cards, the new bank account, the sudden interest in your appearance. You thought you could transition from me to Trent without losing your lifestyle. Jack, please. But you made one mistake. You assumed I was too stupid or too weak to fight back. I never thought you were stupid. No, you thought I was controllable. There's a difference. I pulled out my phone and showed her a screenshot of her Instagram post from 2 days ago. A photo of her and Trent at an expensive restaurant with the caption, New Beginnings. You posted this while you were begging me to reconsider the divorce. Her face went pale. I can explain. You don't need to explain. You've made your choice very clear. Jack, I made a mistake. Can't we work through this? No, because this wasn't a mistake. This was a plan, and now you get to live with the consequences. I started to walk away, then turned back. One more thing, Vivian. The apartment closes in 10 days. After that, you and your friends are going to have to find somewhere else to hold your strategy meetings. As I walked out of the restaurant, I could hear her crying behind me, but I didn't look back. Mike was waiting by his truck in the parking lot. How'd it go? About as expected. She's sorry she got caught, but she's not sorry she did it. What's next? Now we wait and see how desperate they get. I didn't have to wait long. The desperate move came 3 days later, and it was stupider than I'd expected. I was at a construction site, reviewing blueprints with my foreman, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed the name of a detective I'd never heard of. Mr. Avery, this is Detective Sarah Morrison with the city police. We need to speak with you about an incident involving your wife. My blood went cold. What kind of incident? She's filed a complaint alleging domestic violence. Can you come down to the station? I looked at Mike, who was standing close enough to hear the conversation. Detective, I haven't seen my wife in 3 days, and I've never laid a hand on her in 20 years of marriage. That's what we need to discuss. Can you be here in an hour? I'll be there in 30 minutes. I hung up and turned to Mike. They're accusing me of domestic violence. That's bullshit, and you know it. Of course it's bullshit, but it's also smart. If they can get a restraining order, they can freeze the divorce proceedings and maybe even get me kicked out of my own assets. What do you need me to do? Call my lawyer. Tell him to meet me at the police station. And Mike, call Mrs. Patterson and tell her to pull all the security footage from the building lobby for the past week. The drive to the police station gave me time to think. This was Vivian's last play. If she couldn't keep me willingly, she'd try to destroy me legally. The problem was, I'd been expecting something like this. Detective Morrison turned out to be a tired-looking woman in her 50s, who seemed skeptical of the whole situation from the moment I walked into the interview room. Mr. Avery, your wife claims you've been harassing and threatening her since she asked for a separation. Detective, my wife didn't ask for a separation. She announced at a party that I was a placeholder husband while she kissed her boyfriend in front of our friends. Morrison's eyebrows went up slightly. She didn't mention a boyfriend. I'm sure she didn't. Did she mention that she's been having an affair for the past 6 months? That's not relevant to the domestic violence allegation. My lawyer, David Chen, Patricia's husband, and one of the best criminal attorneys in the city, chose that moment to arrive. Sorry I'm late. Has my client been charged with anything? We're just talking, Morrison said. Then we're done talking. David sat down next to me. Detective, what evidence do you have of domestic violence? Morrison opened a file folder. Mrs. Avery claims her husband has been making threatening phone calls, following her, and attempting to intimidate her friends. Do you have recordings of these threatening phone calls? No. Witnesses to the following? No. Any physical evidence of intimidation? Morrison was starting to look annoyed. Mr. Avery did sell their apartment without his wife's knowledge. Is Mrs. Avery on the deed to the apartment? No, but then selling his own property isn't a crime. David pulled out his phone. Detective, I'm going to show you something interesting. He played a video that I recognized as Sienna's Instagram story from the party. The sound quality was poor, but you could clearly hear Trent's toast and see Vivian kissing him. This was posted 3 days before Mrs. Avery claims the domestic violence began. Does this look like a woman who's afraid of her husband? Morrison watched the video twice, her expression growing more skeptical. Detective, I said, I'd like to file a counter-complaint. For what? Filing a false police report. I have security footage showing that I haven't been to my wife's current residence, phone records showing that I haven't called her, and witnesses who can testify that she's been publicly bragging about her new relationship while simultaneously claiming to be a victim of domestic violence. Morrison closed the file folder. Mr. Avery, you're free to go. Mrs. Avery, I suggest you be more careful about the accuracy of your statements in the future. Outside the police station, David shook his head. That was amateur hour. Whoever advised her to file that complaint should lose their law license. I'm pretty sure it was Greg Martinez. Martinez? He's supposed to be smarter than that. Desperate people make stupid decisions. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. I showed it to David. Save that. If they keep harassing you, we can get a restraining order against them. The irony wasn't lost on me. I drove back to my temporary apartment, but I wasn't surprised to find Trent waiting in the parking lot. He was leaning against a silver Porsche that probably cost more than most people's houses. We need to talk, he said as I got out of my truck. No, we don't, Jack. This has gone too far. I agree. You should have thought about that before you decided to blow up my marriage. I didn't blow up anything. Your marriage was already over. I stopped walking and turned to face him. Is that what Vivian told you? She told me you two had been having problems for years. And you believed her? Why would she lie? I laughed. Trent, you're not as smart as you think you are. What's that supposed to mean? It means you're not the first affair she's had. You're just the first one stupid enough to think she was going to leave me for you. The color drained from his face. That's not true, isn't it? Ask her about David Park from the tech company, or the judge she was clerking for 3 years ago, or her law school professor. You're lying, am I? Or are you just realizing that you're not as special as she made you think you were? Trent pushed off from his car and took a step toward me. You're trying to turn me against her. I don't need to turn you against her. She'll do that herself, as soon as she realizes you can't provide the lifestyle she's used to. I have money. You have your family's money. And from what I hear, they're not too happy about your involvement with a married woman. His face went white. How do you know about your family threatening to cut you off? Small town Trent. People talk. I started walking toward my apartment again. Jack, wait. I turned back. What? What do you want? Money? I can pay you. You can't afford what this cost me. Then what? I want you to understand that actions have consequences. You wanted to play games with people's lives? Congratulations. Now you get to find out what happens when someone plays back. I left him standing in the parking lot and went upstairs to my apartment. The next morning, I woke up to find my truck vandalized. All 4 tires were slashed, the windows were broken, and someone had keyed "asshole" into the paint on both sides. I called the police, filed a report, and then called my insurance company. Then I called David Chen. They just escalated this from stupid to criminal, I told him. Can you prove it was them? Not yet. But I'm about to make it very easy for them to prove it themselves. What are you planning, Jack? I'm planning to give them enough rope to hang themselves. Be careful. Don't do anything that could backfire on you legally. Don't worry. I'm not going to break any laws. But I'm done playing defense. It was time to go on offense.